Yo, what is up guys, and welcome to a brand new video on my channel. So in today's video we are going to go over something that is very important and also very underrated in Apex, and it's not talked about too much, and that is how to strafe correctly and how to take less damage in fights. Alright, so this video is going to be separated into 3 parts. And in part number 1, we're going to go over some very important rules and what are some things that you should avoid doing while strafing and while being in a fight. And then in part 2, I'm going to go over every strafing type and explaining how they work and what they are. And then in part number 3, we are going to go over when and how to apply these strafing types and when the right scenarios are to use these strafing types. Alright, so let's get right into the first part. So rule number 1, crouch spamming. You should avoid crouch spamming at all times, since if this is your enemy right there in front of me and you do this, so basically you just crouch spam, what happens is your model, your character actually barely even moves. And if your enemy aims at your chest area, basically what you're doing is just walking into his shots with your head, and you're basically giving him a free headshot multiplier. And then rule number 2, basically the same thing, just jump spamming. It is a little bit of a different story if you are on Horizon, because she has air strafes, but jumping basically just makes your shots hit less because of the bloom. As soon as you jump, your shots are gonna be way more spread and you're not really gonna hit your target, and on their screen you're not moving that much, so it's pretty easy for them to hit you. And then rule number 3, which is a pretty obvious one, and that is you should not just one-way strafe. Basically a one-way strafe is just when you keep walking into one direction the whole entire fight. What happens is at the start they're gonna miss a few bullets because they're thinking you might strafe back to the other direction, but then as soon as they realize that you're just one-way strafing, you're just gonna get beamed. So that's definitely not the most effective way to strafe. And those were pretty much the 3 most important rules about strafing, and now we're gonna get into the second part of the video, which is me explaining all of the different strafing types, what they are, and how to do them. And then in the third part, I'm gonna also explain how you can use them, when to use them, and just how to apply them. Alright, so let's get right into the second part. So these are the different strafes that we're gonna go over in this part, and they are anti-mirror and mirror strafe, bias strafe, and then what are pockets and how you can use them, and then how to manipulate your enemy's strafe so that he plays in a smaller pocket. This might sound really weird right now, but we're gonna go over this in a bit. Alright, so let's get right into the first strafing type, which is probably the most basic 2 strafes that you should be knowing how to do and what they are. Basically what you're seeing on screen right now is a mirror strafe, and that means that you are going the same direction as your enemy, as you can see right here. Also, I'm going to be linking this document in the description down below if you want to check it out yourself. It explains strafes pretty well, so if you want to read through it, I'm going to link it in the description. Alright, so now this is a mirror strafe right here, and then this right here is an anti-mirror strafe. Basically, it's the exact same thing, just the opposite. So whenever your enemy moves left, you are going right. Whenever he goes right, you are going left. Alright, so basically, if you are a controller player, anti-mirror strafe is going to be what you're going to do 90% of the time. This is basically the best strafe for controller players, since anti-mirroring your enemies makes your aim assist bubble really easy to reach, and it makes them stay inside of your aim assist bubble. And mirror strafe is something that you shouldn't do on controller too much. You can implement it sometimes to throw off your enemy, but this is mostly something that works better for M and K players, since they can readjust their aim pretty quickly and they're not relying on any aim assist bubble, compared to controller players, which if you suddenly go a different direction here, your enemy is probably going to move out of your aim assist bubble and it's going to be hard to readjust onto your enemy. Alright, so the second strafe, which is a very important one and one that is a little bit more advanced than just mirroring and anti-mirroring, and that is called global bias or bias strafe. And basically what it means is, as you can see right here, this is you, the green dot is you. What it means is basically you're prioritizing one direction. So basically, if you want to go to the left, you are moving slowly to the left over time, but you're not just, as I said, we're not one-way strafing. That's an important rule. So you're not just moving to the left, you're actually doing quick readjusts and quick like strafes to throw off your enemy, but you're still prioritizing walking to this side over here. And that is basically what is called a bias strafe. And it's the same for the other side right here. As you can see, it's literally just readjusting your strafe while still prioritizing one direction that you want to go towards. And this is actually a very important strafe, and we're gonna get into why this is very important in the third part a little bit deeper. Alright, so the next strafe is not actually a strafe, it's more of a description for the next strafe. And basically, I'm gonna tell you guys what a pocket is. It's pretty easy, to be honest. So if this is you as the player, and this right here is the pocket, this is the area where you can move and strafe in. Just keep this in mind. We're gonna go over how to manipulate your enemies into smaller pockets so they have less space to move and strafe in, and that's gonna be the next strafe that we're gonna be talking about. Alright, so the fourth strafe is manipulating your enemy's strafing pocket. To be honest, it's not really a strafe, it's more of a strategy on how you can make your enemy's strafing pocket smaller. So imagine this. This right here is you, and this right here is your enemy. So what you would be doing in this situation is you would be strafing outwards here. So you have this entire pocket to strafe in right here. So you have this entire area. So if you use the bias strafe that we talked about earlier, which is prioritizing one direction, so you in this scenario, you are prioritizing moving to this direction right here. And the reason for that is, if you move into this direction, your enemy is going to subconsciously anti-mirror you. As I said, controller players, they should be anti-mirroring 90% of the time, and most controller players do it subconsciously. So what he's going to be doing if you move into this direction right here is he's going to move towards this wall right here. So this is a wall. And what he's going to be doing is he's going to create a smaller pocket for him to strafe in. So basically you're going to have all of this area to strafe in, and because you moved to this direction and basically manipulated his strafe, so he anti-mirrors you, so you walk into this direction, he walks into this direction towards the wall. What that means is he's going to have this little area here besides the wall to strafe, and he can't really move because the wall is right next to him. And then you are basically dominant in this fight because you have all of the area to strafe in while he is right next to the wall. And that is basically how to manipulate your enemies into smaller pockets, and that's basically called a manipulative strafe, you could say. And yeah, that's basically the last strafe. And now we're going to get into a very important topic, and that is part 3 of the video, which is when and how to use these different strafing types. So in the second part, the first strafe that we talked about was anti-mirroring and mirroring. Basically, if you and your enemy are moving in an open field, what you should always be doing is you should react to what your enemy is doing. So if he is strafing into this direction right here, you are going to anti-mirror him into this direction. And one very important rule for this scenario is you should never strafe in a vertical line towards him or backwards. Because the reason for that is if you move into these two directions on his screen, you're barely going to move. So you should always strafe diagonally to your enemy. So basically if he strafes this way, you are going to strafe this way. So you guys are 90 degrees to each other. This is a very important rule. You should always stay 90 degrees to your enemies or diagonally. So basically if he moves into this direction, you move into this direction. And if he moves like towards this direction, you're going to correct your strafe and move to this direction. So you always want to stay diagonal to your enemy. And for this scenario in particular, what you want to be doing is anti-mirroring. If you're in controller, anti-mirror 90% of the time. So if you're in an open field, that is a very important rule to follow. Alright, so scenario number 2. You and your enemy are in this fight right here, and he has an object next to him, like for example a rock. And what you should be doing in this situation is the manipulative strafe using bias strafe. So as we talked about it, you're going to be moving into this direction right here, and you're not going to do a one-way strafe. We went over this in the rules. Never do a one-way strafe, because that's going to be a free beam for your enemy. But in this scenario, you're going to use the bias strafe. So basically you're going to walk into this direction, but you can do small redirects like this to throw your enemy's aim off. And while you're doing this, he is going to anti-mirror you into the rock, and he's going to play this small pocket right here on the rock, while you have all of this area to move in. So even though he has an object which should theoretically give him the advantage in the fight, you are still going to have the overhand in this fight, because you biased strafe out and use a big pocket to strafe in. So that is basically how and when to use bias strafe, and it's pretty simple. And yeah, this is basically the simplest way on how you could describe bias strafe or global bias, and how and when to use it. You want to use this strafe to manipulate your enemies into smaller pockets. Just keep this in mind. And now for the last part of this section, I'm going to go over when you can actually use a jump. So basically in the first part, the rules, we talked about how you shouldn't be jumping or just spam your jump button while you're in a fight. And there's a very specific scenario where you can actually implement a jump. And that is if you and your enemy are in a fight and you notice that he is almost knocked. So you did like let's say you did 130 damage. He is on a purple evo and he's about to die. Basically what you can be doing is at the end of the fight, so right before he goes knocked, you can actually implement a jump. And the reason for that is, imagine this is your jump curve right here. So basically this is where you're going up, and this right here is where you're falling back down to the ground. You can use this part of the jump right here where you're going up at the end of a fight, because this is the fastest part of a jump. When you're going up, it's pretty much instant. You're just jumping and then you're in the air. And that's gonna throw off your enemy's aim. But if you do it too early and you jump mid-fight, what's gonna happen is your enemy is gonna be able to track this easy, slow fall down back to the ground. So jumping should only be implemented at the end of a 1v1 scenario. And that's basically the last part of part 3 on how to implement and use these strafes. And what you can be doing is you can go into the firing range with a friend, for example, and try all of these different strafing types and practice them in those scenarios that I mentioned with a friend to see how it actually helps you to take less damage, and to practice it so you can actually code your head so you actually do it in game. Alright guys, and those were basically the strafing basics. If you have any questions or if anything was too hard to understand, make sure you leave a question in the comments down below and I'm gonna try to explain it to you. And as I said, just go into the firing range with a friend and try to actually code your brain to do this in fights. So practice it over and over with a friend until it feels like it comes naturally, because when it comes naturally you can just play and you're gonna notice how you're gonna be taking less damage in 1v1 fights and how you are going to win more 1v1s in the best scenario. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Make sure to comment, like and subscribe, and I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Love you guys.